All right, all right, all right. All right. Welcome, everybody. Another Tax It Thursday. Today, we are going to dig a little deeper into the IRS. I've made some posts, at least one, where the IRS is now starting to use artificial intelligence to go after wealthy tax cheats. So, we're going to dig a little deeper into that topic so you can see kind of which companies are out there, working with the IRS. And we're going to hear from the IRS director. Hey, Tom, is that Mike coming in okay? And Tiana, let me know if I'm coming into on TikTok and everything else. Yeah, so we're gonna talk about we're gonna dig deep into the and on YouTube too. Um, we're gonna dig deep into the IRS so that we can learn a little bit more about what might happen in the future. And then we're gonna hear about a investigation that actually James O'Keefe did, where he went through and sent in an undercover to talk to an IRS employee, supposedly an enforcement agent, and he revealed some stuff about the IRS, which is interesting but not surprising. So we'll go over that, and then we'll go over some data because obviously I like data. I like playing with data, so we'll go over some of that stuff. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we're gonna do is I want to react to certain segments of a video that the IRS commissioner put out a couple days ago. Um, Basically, the history on it is the IRS is now looking at increasing their enforcement actions, basically collecting more taxes from wealthy tax people, right? So they're sending out their agents to look for additional money, and they're using AI in a big way to identify those companies, those pass-through entities that have either been delinquent on taxes and they owe taxes, or there's some potential for fraud um, associated with that particular entity. So the AI looks at the companies, analyzes the companies, and then they send their agents out so that they can go and investigate. So we're going to look at a video from the IRS commissioner now, and then I'll react to it. There's certain segments that are really interesting. 1 second here, let me pull it up. All right, so we're going here. Audio is good, and then yeah, let me know if the video comes in good too, and the audio on the video. So I'm gonna switch my camera here over to the live video. I figured putting this would be interesting. Okay, let me go ahead and play the video. Give me 1 second here. All right. Oh, hey, we're gonna go over this Excel spreadsheet too. Let's see here. All right, we're going to here. All right, boom. So this is a conversation that he had with a reporter. I'm gonna blow this up, and then we're gonna go over certain segments here. So let me skip to one here. All right, and then that's it. And then here we go.
There's a risk of non-compliance.
And why $400,000 a year as the cutoff?
You know, that cutoff was
Okay, so what they're saying is they're essentially looking at 400,000 as the cutoff. Anything below 400,000, they're not going to look into. What they haven't done though is they haven't really said whether that's 400,000 married joint or 400,000 single, 400,000 head of household, or there's a big discrepancy there, right? But 400,000 is a number that's being thrown out right now. Awesome. TikTok is good. Okay, good. Thanks, Tiana.
articulated by Secretary Yellen. I think that is a space where the Secretary and her leadership team and others felt would be the right demarcation to send that message to the American people that, you know, a lot of Americans that are middle, low income make nowhere near $400,000 a year. And by setting that line at $400,000, they could even feel more secure that the goal of the IRS with the Inflation Reduction Act resources is not to increase audit scrutiny on them. So I think 400,000 is a safe distance away from where most taxpayers are. And they should know that when I get up in the morning and go to sleep at night, where my focus is from an enforcement standpoint is in those high-risk areas amongst the largest corporations, the largest complex partnerships, and millionaires and billionaires.
So, okay, I'm sorry, the YouTube video is a little weird. I got to figure out why. It's kind of like robotic. It's my OBS. But so he said some very interesting things about the $400,000, right? Well, first of all, he didn't specify whether it's for single taxpayers or married taxpayers. He didn't specify, and no one in the IRS has specified that so far. Another thing that he may or may not be, he probably is thinking about it, just never mentioned it in his response, is, well, what if you have a taxpayer in New York City or California, specifically San Francisco, right? Where essentially the median income is 400,000 for middle income earners, right? Or in New York. So I've had clients in both, and their income is substantially higher than anywhere else because they're okay. The audio on my mic or the audio on the video is glitchy. Okay, good. Yeah, as long as you can kind of hear it, I'll have to figure out, you know, what's going on with this with the audio. Audio is always, as I've come to find out, audio seems to be the hardest part about streaming, especially live. Video is relatively easy, but audio signals and anyway. So yeah, so that 400,000 doesn't take into account, well, what if you live in California? What if you live in New York? You know, that's going to be a little different because income is a lot higher on there. So he never mentioned that, and that's something that I'll keep track of and push out on my social media, like, hey, this is where they're going with it, right? So basically, what he's saying is they're going to use AI to go after people that are making 400,000. Initially, it's going to be the higher partnerships, the higher pass-throughs. So they've identified 1,600 entities that they're actually going after right now. But these are assets in the millions and billions. I mean, 100 million plus, right? So yeah, so there's another thing that he talks about here that's kind of interesting in terms of process, right? So the tax code is about 70 plus thousand pages when you include the revenue bulletins and everything else. From a process standpoint, how are you going to identify which deductions are valid, which deductions are not, when was it a personal, when was it a business expense, you know, because sometimes, and they'll go over it, sometimes it's kind of, it's a both thing, right? Um, so how is AI going to differentiate, and how is the agent going to differentiate between the two? So this is a good little clip here that he goes over. Give me 1 second.
There are over,
What,
yeah.
when there are people that I know who, let's say, they have a vacation home in St. Bart's. They also co-own a gallery in St. Bart's. Maybe they just happen to own a gallery, or maybe it's a business that they can visit with their jet to justify flying to St. Bart's. But isn't it going to be complicated for the IRS to say, okay, yes, you have a business in Nantucket or the Bahamas or St. Bart's or wherever they're flying to that's not their main home, but we don't think that the reason that you were there was business, and we don't think it justifies. Isn't it going to get, when you go flight by flight, visit by visit, where did you go as soon as you landed? Isn't that going to be, relative to the amount of revenue you'll raise, a lot of work?
This is a complex part of the tax law, but we have rules that help guide you in terms of that exact hypothetical that you provided. You can go to IRS and Treasury regulations, and it will set out a set of instructions on what to do. The issue is that not enough taxpayers are sitting with those instructions and doing the diligence to make sure that they're tracking their corporate flights, their personal flights, and then what to do when they're mixing both business and pleasure on a trip. And look, why this is important. There are more than 10,000 corporate jets operating in America today. Many of them, most of them, worth tens of millions of dollars. The depreciation schedule on those is front-loaded all in the first 5 years. What does that mean? That means when these individuals and companies issue their tax returns, their deduction on corporate jets can be tens of millions of dollars. It is material. We need to make sure that it is right and correct. And that's why we're focused on this, because we know that record keeping on this has historically been poor. We know that there are a certain segment of taxpayers that are not doing their diligence in making sure they have it right. And then you look at the tax return and you see how material the deduction is. And you say, not only is it important to do it because it's the right answer, because it's meaningful to what gets returned to the US Treasury, but it also is meaningful to build trust with taxpayers that we're taking our job seriously and making sure everybody plays by the rules.
Yeah, and when you talk about meaningful in terms of,
Yeah, so let me go ahead and translate basically what he's saying about all of this, right? Um, if you own a private jet, you're screwed. I mean, they're gonna come after you hard, right? And it may right now, and we're gonna talk about red flags here in a little bit, but if you own a private jet, forget about it. IRS is coming after you. You got to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row, right? That's another thing. Now the burden of proof is no longer on the IRS. The burden of proof is on you. So if you're taking, I don't know, let's just say a trip on your private jet or a charter flight or something like that to New York for, let's say you own a family office, right? Hypothetically. Well, now you have to document, take pictures, put it on the calendar, write minutes. Hey, I got on the plane at this time. I left the plane on this time. Now the burden of proof is on you. And if you don't have that, and the AI says, hey, guess what, buddy? We suspect that you're being fraudulent on this return. Now the AI, now you become a target of the AI, right? And then so that's basically what I got out of that. It's yes, he's saying that the system needs to be more fair, and I completely agree with that. But the system is so complicated, 70 plus thousand pages, including revenue bulletins and everything else, that you need essentially an army of enrolled agents or accountant or tax preparers or CPAs or annual filing preparers or whatever it is to just be able to have the minimum compliance so that if the IRS does ask questions, well, now you can respond, right? So it's either going to create more of a burden on regular taxpayers, or it's it's definitely going to create more work for the IRS, like he said, without really the expectation of getting any return on their investment, right? Whereas if they put this money towards customer service so that people can go and call and resolve their issues, it might be a little better, right? But we're going to go over some of that towards the end of the video, as far as where the IRS is putting their money. But yeah, private jets is going to be a red flag. So we're going to go into red flags now, and I'm going to show you some resources here. Give me 1 second. We're going to finish out this video here. All right, here we go.
And we want to crack down on that. And most Americans don't have that option.
Right. What if you're a high earner or you have a complex return? What would you say are the sort of 2 or 3 red flags that the IRS would be looking for to say, you know what, based on the way we see the world, these are high risk issues. So for our audience, which is a fairly affluent audience, what are the things they should know are going to be a red flag for you when it comes to the potential of being audited as they're doing their taxes right now?
Well, we are trying to be transparent as we can in terms of what are some of our emerging focus areas. So, red flag, your use of corporate aircraft. Red flag, your assessment of your income as to you, the individual, or you as a limited partner. These are, like, we are laying out with increasing frequency what we're calling our high-risk areas that we are making sure there's a cop on the beat to make sure that people are paying what they owe. And I would hope that industries and your viewers are paying attention to these high-risk areas, and they could look at related areas, because once we gain momentum...
What would a related area be, for instance?
Well, I mean, other types of corporate assets and their depreciation schedules. And making sure that those depreciations are full and complete in business versus personal.
It sounded like from your press conference on this that you have the ability now in the analytics side to actually track corporate jet and private jet flights. And I know we have all these websites now that track somebody's jet. Is that part of the data that you're using? Because you can say, okay, this tail number is owned by this company, and we saw it went to Nantucket 4 times in August.
Yeah.
And I mean, is that something you can...
It's a great question, because one of the challenges that was presented to me when I was going through Senate confirmation to be IRS commissioner was, how do you use data effectively to do your job without overreach? Right, so I got a lot of questions. Are you going to reach into people's bank accounts unfairly? Are you going to intrude on people's private information? And the answer is, we're going to find the right balance. We're not going to do unnecessary intrusions. We're going to look at what authorities does Congress give us, and we're only going to operate within our authority.
Notice he didn't say no. Right? All right.
And as it turns out, there are obtainable databases out there that the IRS can obtain and other members of the public can obtain that are perfectly legal to obtain. It's really 2 things. It's getting that database and having the wherewithal and the focus to bring that database into our environment. And then it's the advanced data science and the analytics to make sure that when we're pulling these audits, we're pulling the right audits. And so it's those 2 things together, but it's balancing. Because I find it very important as part of trust building to make sure that people don't have the impression or that there's any evidence to it that the IRS is going outside of its legal bounds in terms of the data we collect to do our job.
Right. And again, I mean...
So who's creating that balance, right? We all know that the government agencies, depending on who's in power, do certain things. Right? I mean, that's a fact. That's not something that I'm, hypothesizing on. So who's creating this balance? And that's where I get a little bit concerned, is because he didn't say no to the bank account. deal. And we're going to see a video here in a little bit um, where it's actually relevant, right? So the IRS has a lot of different resources where they can tap into, and then they can get information, which is one of the things that's happening too is with this 1099K rule that I've talked about before, and I'll probably revisit here in the future, is they are trying to lower the limit to send out 1099Ks to people for anything over $600. But right now it's 20,000, but they're trying to lower it to 600. So it's one of those things where AI is slowly creeping into the government area where they have actually enforcement powers, right? So they can put you in jail. And so now is the government going to go through the due diligence necessary above and beyond what the AI is doing to ensure that the information the AI is spitting out is accurate? Because we know I've used ChatGPT. I use it all the time. It's a great tool, but I mean, it has errors. It's prone to errors, right? Um, so he mentioned red flags. So I'm going to go over some red flags here that could potentially be part of like the whole deal.
I assume that
One
data
second.
includes private jet flights.
That data includes private jet flights, which is
Okay. I mean, you heard it, right? And not just that, related items. No, remember he mentioned related items. So it's not just private jets. There's going to be a host of things that are going to cause red flags now. And it's not just jets. It could be real estate. It could be vehicles. It could be, I mean, anything that is a corporate asset that has the potential for abuse can be part of this whole red flag thing. So let's talk about red flags here. Give me 1 second. Oh no, this is something else, but we'll eventually get to this contract, Booz Allen. Oh, this is not it. Let me see here. That's Tableau. Okay, actually, give me 1 second. It's gonna be this. Maybe I need to copy this. All right, here we go. All right, yeah. So the Kiplinger, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. They came out with this article here, which is really interesting about how the IRS is going to use chatbots and AI and everything else to help essentially with the processing of returns, with the customer service, etc. Right? So let's go down to the red flag. Talk about some red flags, IRS red flags for wealthy filers, right? And again, they mentioned 400,000, right? So that's the number they're throwing out. There's no specifics, but anything over 400,000 could be an issue for you in the future. Okay, so let's go back down here. Okay, so I hope you guys can see that. So these are some of the red flags that the IRS has identified on returns and will be subject to increased scrutiny by the IRS and enforcement, right? So claiming residence in Puerto Rico without actually having real residency there. So one of the things that I've found out through just analysis is the IRS has contracted many different state agencies and other agencies to provide them information on wages, real estate holdings, things of that nature, right? So that's one of the items that they're going to be looking at is this residency deal in Puerto Rico. So if you live in Puerto Rico and you have an asset there but you don't live there, just know that your return is automatically red flagged. Claiming exemptions based on treaty rules between the U.S. and Malta. Apparently, there's something going on between Malta and the U.S. The U.S. has tax treaties with a lot of different countries, Dominican Republic, and so they can go ahead and tap into that information if needed. so that way they can enforce their, their income tax collection duties. So if you have anything to do with Malta, just know that you're a red flag already. Failing to file tax returns, but making luxury purchases. So how do they know that you're making luxury purchases, right? Because they're going to have access to sales tax information. They're going to have access to your bank account. You heard the IRS chief said, nope, we're not, he didn't say no, that they're not going to access bank accounts. They said that they want to make it fair and balanced, right? But who's behind making it fair and balanced? Who's actually pressing the keys? Because there's one thing when it's up here, right? When direction comes from the top, by the time it gets down, it's going to be a completely different. It's like the telephone game. It's going to be a completely different order, right? So if you're purchasing any kind of luxury items, big ticket cars, private jets, just know that you might get some scrutiny there. Illegally moving assets off to offshore accounts, just anything with offshore, and if the account has your name on it and it's offshore, it's automatic red flag. You have to make sure you report that, because the IRS issues very, 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 and I'm going to say it one more time, very stiff penalties if you don't report your foreign assets, right? And if you don't report what they call an FBAR to the government, because what they're trying to do is prevent the money laundering and the tax shell game that's going on, right? Contractors claiming to make 1099 missed 1099 payments to subcontractors that appear to be shell companies, right? So sometimes people just set up these firms. They send out 1099s to these a bunch of different companies to kind of have that deduction, but the shell company doesn't really do anything. So that's a red flag. And then, as I mentioned, FBAR violator. So if you don't report your foreign income and you don't report that using the FBAR process, that's an automatic red flag. And then the last one they have here is being involved in significant cryptocurrency exchanges. So if you have a lot of crypto and you're moving around in the crypto space, and I would assume, and again, I don't know, there's no specific guidance on this, it probably won't be, that the average person just holding their, $20,000, $30,000 in crypto is not going to be an issue. What they're looking at is those folks that have millions and millions of dollars in crypto, moving it from one place to another and doing all that. But again, knowing what I know about government contracting, they don't want to go after the complex stuff. They want to check the box and move on to the next one, right? It makes them look good. It's all about stats. Makes them look good, makes their bosses look good, and that's just the way it is. Okay, so having said that, we're going to look at a video that James O'Keefe put out a couple days ago. O'Keefe Media, I believe, is the name of his company. He actually does, in my opinion, real investigative journalism. So we're going to go over a video of an IRS employee who was kind of telling it how it is, right? Maybe he was showing off as a guy, he's going out with a girl. Who knows, right? But we're going to go over this video here. It's actually really interesting. So that way you can kind of see, okay, well, this is what's actually happening on the inside, right? Give me 1 second.
Go to motionready.com to add this to your video, and
Of
that,
course.
and that.
Yes. That's all right.
Fire,
Gotta do
smoke,
what they gotta
2D. Get it on Motion Array.
Create this
Can't find
in
my
just
mouse.
one click.
Motionarray.com.
Endless sound effects.
Get it on Motion Array.
We need the best
Oh, there's
music
too
for
much
this video.
going on. I don't
Get
know
it
what's
on
happening
Motion
here.
Array.
I'm confused.
Go to Motion Array now to get everything you need to create stunning videos.
Here we go. There it is. Now I see it.
And, quote,
right.
destroy people's lives, unquote.
Here we go.
I met with the senior agents like the last week.
Yeah.
So they said
like those agents have been there for like 15 and 20 years. They said that we were all nice when we started. Now look at us. They are assholes.
Really?
They are the definition of an asshole. All of them.
What do you mean by that?
Like, they have no problem like going after the small people, you know, putting people in prison, like destroying people's life.
Really?
They have no problem doing that.
So, I mean, this is coming out of an IRS employee's mouth. So it's one of those things where they need to check the box, right? And if you have an army of accountants and tax preparers and enrolled agents and lawyers and the whole shebang, the IRS is going to go in there. They're going to look at the books. Hey, all this is in order. So they've spent all this money and all this effort to recover nothing, which is what he's saying is, hey, you know what? They have no qualms going after the smaller preparers who can't afford the army of accountants, because that is where they get the most collection from, right? So right now, according to the IRS commissioner, they're going after wealthy tax cheats. We're going to see how that plays out over the next couple years. But it'll definitely be something to keep an eye out for. I want to play another clip here where the IRS commissioner was talking about big data, right? AI, leveraging data. We already talked about the red flags and the access to data that the IRS has or is getting. So I want to play this clip because he essentially says, yeah, the IRS has access to your bank accounts and they don't need a warrant, which is true in some respect. But let me go ahead and play this here for y'all. All right.
They can audit like whoever they want.
Alex Maynard describes how the IRS has a system that uses artificial intelligence to target potential abusers.
So who makes those decisions though? If you're not making that decision to like go after a certain company or a person, then who is like someone above you is making that decision?
No, actually right now we have a system that uses AI.
It uses AI.
Yep, to target like potential like abusers.
How does the AI? Wait, I would never, ever have thought that would be possible.
Yeah.
AI really is out to take over the world, isn't it?
Yes.
So how does AI do that?
So we have like all the information from all the companies like in the whole world, actually, not just in the United States.
Yeah.
So the AI looks at all the returns, looks at the bank statements, looks at the books. And if there is like a potential for fraud, like it knows there is a potential for fraud. Yeah.
So AI has access to like everybody's bank account? What?
Yeah. But they
Is that like nationwide or just here in like New York, New Jersey?
No, nationwide.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
But actually, like most of the cases, because we're still controlling the AI for now, because it's a new system. Like most.
Notice he said for now. Notice he said they're controlling the AI for now.
Most of the cases we get, is like referral. Like these people like snitching on each other. Those are like most of the cases we get right now.
Wait, what do you mean people snitching on each other?
Like we get an anonymous tip about like a huge corporation that like overvalued their assets by like $10 billion.
But does the AI also do their own investigation into people's emails or phone numbers or phone lines? No. But they just dip into your bank account.
They see the amount in your bank account, yes.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah.
A little invasive, isn't it?
And a lot of people like are not happy with it.
No, when did that begin? Has it always been this way, or?
Alex Mena describes how invasive.
So, so you heard it, right? I'm actually surprised that more people aren't livid about this, right? But I mean, I guess we got other priorities. But yeah, so AI, they're going to access different databases. We're going to go over some of that here in a little bit. But you heard it from him, right? Like they have access to bank statements, books, you name it, it's there, and they don't need a warrant. So um, it is definitely something concerning, which is it kind of is almost the complete opposite of what the director is saying, right? This is an employee of the company, employee of the IRS, and there's a whole different message when the camera is not on, right? So let's go ahead and skip to another section here. All right.
Hyundai Palisade versus Nissan Pathfinder.
Hyundai
Look what
Palisade.
Palisade has and what Pathfinder doesn't. Hyundai.
Last year, there was an article describing how the IRS was deploying AI to target rich partnerships and tracking of digital assets. The Supreme Court has upheld in Pulselli versus IRS the authority of the IRS to review bank records, in particular, examine the bank records of people with late payments without notice, and even their family members. This power is triggered under IRS Section 7602, which provides the authority to interview the taxpayer, the principal officers, third parties, and lower-level employees. There's also the Bank Secrecy Act, which examines transactions to detect money laundering and tax evasion. The Biden White House issued an executive order which included some federal limits on the use of artificial intelligence. Speaking of the Biden White House, Alex Mena points out that it's AI whether we want it or not. And after all, it's a, quote, federal agency under the president.
But the thing about the IRS, because it's a federal agency just under the president.
Wait, say it again.
The IRS, because it's a federal agency. We are like right under the Congress and the president.
Yeah.
The state really doesn't have a say on what we do.
Wow. So AI, whether we want it or not.
The Office of Management and
So it's AI whether we want it or not, right? And there are good uses to all the technology that's happening, the machine learning, the deep learning, the chat GPTs, the computer vision. I mean, there are, and I'm actually implementing some of those tools in my practice, right? So there are good things about AI, but in the wrong hands, it's going to be something that is going to create more problems than it solves, right? Um, so that's where I am a little apprehensive about, because a lot of people, a lot of accountants actually will tell you, oh, if you're not doing anything wrong, don't worry about it. Okay, well, how do you know you're not doing anything wrong? There's 70 plus thousand pages in the tax code, the tax laws, and everything else. How do you know that you're not doing anything wrong? If you're a small business owner, it's impossible for you to keep track of all that. It just absolutely is. So now that we know, okay, we've heard from the top, right? So this is what the brass is saying about this whole AI expansion and how they're going to increase audits for certain taxpayers. Now you know what the actual employees are talking about when the camera's not on, right? Now we're going to look at the contracts that are out there. So let me kind of explain a little bit about government contracts and how it all works. So the government, for the most part, okay, I'm just going to say it. Government employees, for the most part, don't do much. I mean, they are hardworking. I'm not going to say that they don't do much, but the government hires contractors to do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, right? The government employees are usually the decision makers, but sometimes they just, hey, they don't want to make the decision. They delegate it to the contractor. The contractor goes ahead and does what they do, or they provide a recommendation to the government employee and the employee goes with it. That's kind of how it works, right? In general, it's a lot more nuanced than that, obviously, but we don't have that much time to go over government contract 101. So, basically, the IRS is going to hire certain companies to set up all this infrastructure. We're going to go over what those companies are, and what they're going to be responsible for. Some of them, right? There's a whole plethora of them, and you're going to see this chart, and you're probably going to have a heart attack, but I'll make it make sense. Okay, give me a second here. Let's go to Tableau. Okay, so like I said, this is probably going to give you a heart attack. So this right here, what I did was I looked at the IRS, the contracts that the IRS issued or paid for in 2023 and 2024, right? And so they go over, basically, this is all the money that, let me see if I can find it. Okay, it's on the right. Yeah. So this is all the money that the IRS essentially issued to companies so that they can do what they do, right? The bigger the ball, the more money was given to that company. The smaller the ball, the less money was given for that particular task, right? Because it's organized by task and it's organized by company. I isolated everything that had to do with construction or toilet paper. I try to isolate that. It's not part of this. So what I included on here was mostly computers, analytics, things like that, right? So I organized what they call NAIC codes, NAICS codes. So we're going to go over some of these companies and who they are and what they're actually hired to do for the IRS in this AI, transition that they're going through. So the highest paid or the highest earners are going to be Deloitte and Touche. This is a technology / accounting firm. Let me give me a second here. All right, we're gonna go ahead and all right. So Deloitte and Touche. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm getting old. And go ahead and put my glasses on. Oh, look at that! Now I can see in 3D. Okay. So we're gonna look for Deloitte and Touche right now. And we're going to see which contracts have been issued to them. Okay, so this is Deloitte, the contracts for Deloitte for 2023 and 2024, right? Mostly, in looking at the contracts, they're mostly tasked with providing digital modernization, digital modernization to the IRS. So like for example, this one is, actually, let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit so we can go ahead and go through it. Okay. So this big one here is, so that's the amount, right? So you have $330 million contract basically and it's going back to COVID, but essentially designing their computer systems. There is more information on that particular contract. I believe it's this one. Let's see. Yeah. So this is the Deloitte and Touche contract. And let me see if I can find the actual description of it. Give me a second. Oh man, it actually goes over this is you can find all this information online. Here we go. So Deloitte and Deloitte Consulting LLP was awarded a delivery order against the Alliant for $330 something million. and services under that program, which is what we saw on the chart. They have a bunch of subcontractors, and essentially their responsibility is to modernize the IT within the IRS. So it looks like based on the money that they're given, they're kind of taking the major one of, because there's a couple of companies, but they're taking one of the major planning uh, duties to help the IRS modernize and implement AI and all that. Let's take a look at another one here, Accenture. They're going to be responsible for modernizing the IT infrastructure with the IRS. Accenture is actually a pretty decent company. They have a lot of decent jobs. Let's see here. Let's look at. Here we go. Okay. So this is Accenture, right? So as you can see, just by looking at the bubbles, they have a lot more. They have big money contracts, more than Deloitte and Touche. So actually, if you look at the Excel here, they're actually the highest paid contractor with the federal government. So that's from 2023 to 2024. Just that's almost $1 billion that the government's paid out, right? So we're gonna go over some of the contracts here. Like I said, they're mostly IRS modernization, IT type contracts. Let's see here. Okay. So let's look at some of these. Some of these are just like, okay, portal delivery. Let's see if one makes sense. Portal delivery, task order. So they have all these task orders, and you have to actually go in and take a look. But I found this article where basically they got a $2.6 billion contract to modernize the IRS within the next 7 years. So the IRS had the foresight and vision to create a contract vehicle with the ability to keep up with or even ahead of new legislative demands. These reforms, let's see. Okay, the contract vehicle also brings 400,000 plus systems in the IRS application development portfolio under one contract, which is kind of good when it comes to processing, because right now the IRS is, one department doesn't know what another department is because they have different applications, different data structures. It's kind of a mess. So from that perspective, I do think that it's good that some of these companies are getting involved in bringing in the expertise, because the IRS doesn't have the money to actually hire these experts, right? So they issue the contract, and then the contract modernizes their infrastructure. So we got let's see, Americans, millions, taxpayers. Okay, so Accenture is another one of those companies that's going to be behind the modernization of the IRS infrastructure. We're going to look at another company. It's called FCN, and FCN is more of a cybersecurity company. Actually, it might be. Let me see. Here we go. So cybersecurity. All right, so FCN. So these are the contracts FCN has gotten, and the circles. It looks like writing from that movie Arrival. But yeah, the circles, the shape of the circles don't really mean anything. It's just the actual size of the circles, right? Okay, so here's some contracts that they have. Let's take a look. Cisco, so more networking. COVID-19 money still out there in 2023. Let's see, Green Plum software for the IRS. Not sure what that is. Cisco combined services for internal that requires consistent, reliable maintenance of the IRS telecommunication infrastructure, so phones. Okay, so basically these are some of the biggest contracts, broadband software licenses, kind of basic stuff. Let's take a look at FCN. Give me a second here. I know I have it. Here we go. So this is one of the reports that came out about FCN and their contracts. So let's see here. Why is this not happening? Oh, they want me to log in. Okay, so we're gonna actually do something on the fly here. FCN and IRS. Okay. Here we go. So the IRS awards 451 million Broadcom software license and maintenance contracts. So basically, their phones, um, and then cybersecurity for some of their data, right? Approach solutions allowing customers experience the live demonstrations, state of the art, Okay, so that's one of the other companies that is involved. There is another one, Booz Allen Hamilton, and they're responsible, and they're in the chart too. So I'm just gonna direct you over to the chart. But Booz Allen Hamilton got a good chunk of change to help with their customer service modernization. So the IRS is taking forever to answer different requests. So Booz Allen Hamilton is in charge of modernizing that whole aspect of the IRS. IBM is also another company that the IRS is contracted with, and their responsibility is maintaining the returns, the database for the returns, and the electronic filing of those returns. They have a lot more contracts. You can actually see them on the chart, but that's kind of their main deal. Now there are some other notable companies that I do want to mention. They didn't necessarily get the hundreds and millions and billions of dollars, but they're going to be a critical part, if you ask me, of this whole AI revolution and collecting additional money. So Services, Continental Services right now, as you can see, doesn't have that many contracts, right? So they only had 2 contracts, but they are a debt collection service, right? So they're going to use different databases and things like that to collect debt, and then they're also kind of an IT company. So that's one of the companies that's going to be essentially trying to figure out and giving the IRS information, and advising on how to collect the different debts. Another company that's actually going to be critical is SAIC, so Science Application International Corporation, right? So SAIC, they're a huge research firm. They do a bunch of other stuff, and their task is going to be essentially storing all this information that they're getting, right? So the IRS has a bunch of different contracts with a lot of data providers on the state government side and the private side. SAIC is going to be responsible for maintaining that database and curating it and making sure it's working right. So not that many contracts, but you can see there is one huge contract here for $210 million. So that's another company. And then the last one that I do want to mention, the last one that I do want to mention is Analytica LLC. So I looked through the 6,000 rows of information to see if I can find anything that was related to AI. This was the only one that stood out, right? So they have a couple of AI contracts. So let's take a look at what they're looking at here. Boom. So you can see, very small contracts, but they are very specific and they're very niche, right? So this is database analyst, research for analytics. So there's a couple of AI contracts where they're looking at using AI within data analytics. So this is another notable contract here. Let me see if I can find some more information on analytic. That's Accenture. We're going to go ahead and close Accenture. We already talked about that. We talked about Deloitte. So that's the Booz Allen Hamilton contracts, where they're essentially in charge of the customer service, as I mentioned before. This one is the FCN contract. And then let's take a look at Splunk. We're not going to talk about Splunk. I was going to talk about it, but no. Let's take a look at Analytica LC. Never heard it. All right, so let's see, Analytica LC. So GovTribe. This is actually a good website for different contract information. So GovTribe, unique employee snapshot market analysis. Let's see what happened. Okay, there's actually no information on GovTribe, surprisingly. Here we go. Treasury awards data science machine learning contract to Analytica. Consulting service task. So, it's a HubZone small business. So, $3 million task order, Department of Treasury, IRS to provide data science, machine learning, consulting services. The task was awarded using 8A schedule. I mean, I can talk about government contracts in another video, but basically, this is one of the firms that's going to be in charge of consulting the IRS as to how to implement their AI. So, as you probably can surmise, now I don't have that much time left, but as you can probably surmise, with the government and business kind of being very intertwined, a lot of corporate policy ends up becoming government policy, right? Because most people in the government just don't have the expertise. They can't. It's impossible to be an expert at everything. So they go to the private sector and see if they can get any help. But we just got to keep an eye on some of these companies to make sure that they're doing right by the taxpayer. And then, of course, keep an eye on the IRS to make sure that they're doing right by the taxpayer. And of course, that's my job as an enrolled agent, which is what I do. So I try to keep aware and abreast of what's happening with politics, taxes, kind of this stuff. And I mean, this is what I do. So that was it for today. Just wanted to go over some of that stuff. Just stay compliant, stay aware. If you have any questions, let me know, and then I'll catch you in the next video. Still trying to figure out what the next topic is going to be. We'll probably look at, since it's the end of the month, probably look at 7206 or 7204 again, the HR bill that's out there. We'll look at that, and then we might do a couple of other interesting things. So just stay aware. I'll make some posts online, and yeah, if you have any questions, give me a call. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next video. I wish I had like a little cool music, but I'm working on it. All right.